All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. If everybody could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Any discussion? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Are there any, at this time, are there any public comments on agenda items only? Anything online? There are not. All right, we'll jump right into discussion. We're going to pick back up where we left off. We do have some answers or some follow-ups from last meeting, but we will come back to those after we get the rest of the way through to line 1003. So we left off at 726, and I'll do like I did last week, going through one page at a time. So currently looking at line items 726 through 754. Selfishly, I can start with my questions, if that's okay. 735, I was just curious what Hot Frog Printing was.
Yeah, Hot Frog is actually a vendor, so it should just say District Print Materials. That's in parentheses. So it's any print materials that we go out and we solicit to be print. Could be anything from brochures that we may need, posters, any other print material.
And just due to the country's inflation, we're expecting that to more than double?
Yeah, inflation and just what we've seen that we want to get material out to the community also.
Okay. Next up, 741. High Five Awards, $900. Are we giving something additional than the little note card, a little piece of paper?
So the High Five Awards were something that the previous principal had started, but it was not budgeted for. So we line itemed it out and put it in the budget. It was previously in just the regular supply items, but it was something that Mrs. Comp had budgeted for in her budget that she submitted. So I just line itemed it out and put it in there as her budget. So it's
Okay, so we were
previously
spending
marked
on it before. We
Right,
just weren't
right.
really seeing it spelled out.
up. Right, so now you're seeing it now.
All right, 743, report card envelopes. I know it's only $175, but can't we just, put them electronically like we do for most, but.
I think we still have,
Printing K to 2 this year. With our new system, School Messenger, we should be able to send the entire electronic report card. Right now, we can't. It's just going into the app. And for the app with K to 2 with the standards, it's a little bit more cumbersome to view. So that's why we decided to print K to 2. I think it would be beneficial to talk to Mr. Hamilton and Mrs. Waldsman about moving forward with the K to 12 electronic. But I feel like we need their input prior to making that decision. Would you agree, Dr. Fox?
100%. I think we would need to allow them some chance to kind of get their feet wet, talk a little bit about, because the goal certainly of any type of report card that we send home is for parents to be able to review it, use it, and guardians, to be able to take it and review it and to understand it. And if it's impact and within it, and especially with standards-based, sometimes the difficulty is being able to have that ability to review it. And that's the goal of all of our school report cards is really, it shouldn't come to a surprise, number one, but number two, it should be a tool and instrument to be able to have conversations and to show and delineate that growth over time for our students.
So ideally, with our new messaging system, we'll be able to push out them in an entirety and not just partially.
Right, but that's potentially coming down the road where we're handling budget right now, so we just need to have a placeholder. Got it.
I had the same question, and actually, I'll go on record saying that I would be in favor of us putting report cards back for everybody, K through 12. So, but I had thought that if we weren't doing it, I had the same question.
745 was my last one, student planners. I'm not,
That's actually
Sure.
removed. We don't do student planners, K to 8 anymore. So that has been removed in the most recent review of our budget.
okay. Anybody else have anything up to 754?
I had a question on 749, and again, I hate that we're nickeling and diming everything, but I guess that's kind of where we are. I have a couple questions about this. One, was this not budgeted in the past, or is it just somewhere else? And that was my one question. But my other question is, I mean, we charge students to park, and from what I know of parking tags, the amount they pay to park should more than pay for their parking tags. So I don't understand why we're charging taxpayers another $200 for parking tags. And the answer that we got was, hold on.
So I put that answer in there. The answer that you got, I believe, is that students will get $10 back from their parking if they meet the attendance guidelines. But that money also goes back into the student fiduciary. And the students then will direct as to where that, sometimes those funds go for student-related purposes. Am I accurate in saying that, Mr.?
Yes.
Oops.
Sorry.
But I'd like to speak to that. Like this, the last time I checked, the Student Fiduciary Fund had like $30,000 or something in it. That's the one fund that can roll over from time to time. So there's a lot, last I checked, there's a lot of money in that account. Plus they all pay like class dues every year, and they pay to park. And so if that doesn't, what does that afford? I mean, I would think we would charge them to park for a reason. Even if we gave them $10 back or whatever, there would still be more than enough to pay for hang tags.
And to answer your first question, Dr. Jones, the reason there wasn't anything last year, we usually buy 2 years' worth, 2 or 3, and get a bulk discount. So that's why there's nothing last year. But yeah, we can do that, definitely cover it, be self-funded and take that out.
What about faculty parking tags? They're not in here anywhere. So,
I think they get those from the district.
Part of our district office supplies that we do, and we buy those, and we buy those in large numbers as well, and I don't believe we've had to buy those for several years.
again, I hate that we're nickeling and diming, but like, there's a lot of money in that student activities fund. I just don't think we should be taking $200 for taxpayers for hang tags when they already have to pay to park.
Sure, so what I'm hearing is it's the will of the collective group to look at 749 and possibly remove that item and use student activities fund to, are we saying that we want to allow for free parking next year for all students who have registered vehicles, or use current parking tags that are already in existence?
No, I say we still charge them, but we use that money to pay for things like
Parking tags.
parking tags or, once upon a time, I don't know what school district it was, but they would charge, and then they would use that money to pay someone to do security in the parking lot or whatever. But I assume we're charging them to park so we can use that money to buy what we need for them to park. I guess otherwise, we would just take it out of our budget and let them park for free, but I don't mind them having to pay
No,
to
I-
park. I just want that money to go toward parking.
So we can't direct, we cannot tell them, the student activities, to take the money out of the activities fund. We cannot do that. But what we can do is, we can, if they buy the tags, we can buy the tags off of their budget. We could, so basically,
Can we just take the money that we get from the students paying to park and just put that into the general fund?
correct, yes, we can do that, and then, yeah, we could do
Which-
that.
Maybe not all of it, just the amount that it takes to pay for the hang tags, and the rest of the money go into the student activities.
Sure, we can do that, yes.
Yeah.
Have we also looked at, because what I hear Mr. Funk saying is we're buying new tags every year, but we're buying them in bulk. Have we also looked at tags that they don't have to be replaced every year, so that basically the students would have to turn them back in? And if they don't turn them back in,
I think he actually said they don't buy them every year.
no, he buys them every 2 years,
every couple
but
of
they buy
years,
them in
but-
bulk, which
yeah.
means I'm assuming it's some kind of, is it a paper tag? Is it a
It's
plastic tag?
Depends on what we can get cheaper. It can be a hang tag, it could be a cling tag. I don't think we'd have many being turned back in year to year because
Part of the student tag each year is to make sure that the students come in and they have license registration, proof of insurance, and that their vehicle is registered to a parking spot. And then we have registered their vehicles onto the lot, so we know. And then they come in, and also if they drive a different vehicle, depending if it's a clean one, they can remove it. But they also come into the office and report that they drove a different vehicle.
And
as
for
well.
all the more the tags are, it helps to get a tag with a year on it, because students will just use other kids' tags from year to year, and it becomes next to impossible to police.
Well, I think, my point is that if you buy a tag that's more durable, that you can use year to year, if they don't turn their tag back in, then they don't get their refund back. Like, you could do that as a refundable deposit for turning their tag back in, because what I'm hearing is we're replacing that. And so then really pricing out, what are we, like doing the cost benefit analysis of looking at, do we spend this much, or do we spend a little bit more and get something a little bit more durable that's gonna last, and put some practices in place that are really going to hold it over and hold them accountable. We have some, it sounds like there are some things in place to hold them accountable at this point, but
They're very durable. Like, if I'm speaking for you, I apologize.
I
They're
was-
very durable. They're plastic, hang tags. They'll last for years and years and years. The problem is, and I don't know how many kids actually get refunds, but the kids who are going to misuse them are the kids who won't be getting refunds. And then just anybody will be using a hang tag. It's more about knowing who's on our campus, who's driving, and the safety information and all of those things. Yeah.
And can I throw one in too?
just-
I might finish it, and you might not even have to say anything at all. I'm also thinking in a cost-benefit analysis this isn't a lot of money. I think what Mike's trying to say is that it's the accounting of it, like if we're already paying for the tag by the parking. But I think if we start to have to police those things, the cost of his salary to do that is gonna way outweigh the cost of a tag. That's what I'm thinking.
the cost is already there. So I think you have to look at all of your other costs, because you have lots of other people involved besides just Mr. Funk policing this. You have secretaries who are doing stuff, but what I'm hearing is that people want dates on it from a security standpoint as opposed to.
that would
those
be
types
one of the
things.
main things, because they're durable, and we could have an exchange, but it's the actual year in the spot, because everyone gets a new spot
Each year.
because of priority change where VOTEC seniors get first, then trickles down. So it's more the year, but yeah, we can do it that way with the money coming in. That's,
All right, anybody else up to 754? Doesn't sound like it.
I
Move on to the
think-
next.
Wait,
oh,
before you
sorry.
go,
Go ahead.
and maybe you guys already addressed this last week when I wasn't here, but I had questions on the copiers and the copy stuff, and not that I question us having copiers, and I think I asked this last year, that do we have these all done under one lease thing? Like, is it one lease, or are we leasing them, is every school leasing them separately?
No, so what we do is we put them under that for accounting purposes, but it's all under one lease.
Okay.
So it's one lease that we pay, but we account for it in that particular sense, so that every school, every district office, everybody has its own separate account code that it gets charged to. But in essence, it's all one payment.
And did we ever look, and I think I asked this before too, buying a copier? Because it just seems that the copier leases are expensive.
It's actually, it's actually cheaper to do it this way, simply because when you buy a copier, the machine breaks and ages out very, very quickly. And then when you do a cost analysis that we just talked about with the student tags, it's actually more expensive to buy the copiers, because with the leases, what you get is you get toner, and you get repair. So anytime the machine breaks, they come and fix it, and it's part of the lease. But when you buy the machine, you get nothing. So you don't get toner, you don't get repair, and you don't get to fix it.
So what's the copy cost then?
Christine might be able to talk more about that.
I can look it up, but we did look, when we went to this latest copier lease, we did look at the option of buying from our previous, and it did not make financial sense.
Okay.
If you want, I can look up in our.
No, I was just wondering, because if he was saying that the toner's included in the lease, and we have a separate cost for copies, for costs, and then a separate cost line item for paper, I was just wondering if there was if it was duplicative or not, you know?
No, paper we have to pay for, but the cost, yeah,
Right, I'm wondering if the cost, if you're saying that the lease is including the toner, I'm wondering what is the other cost to a copier?
The actual cost per copy is 3 cents per copy.
There it is, that's the, okay.
So we have to pay per copy? And we pay for the paper?
We definitely pay for paper. Paper is not included in the
Right.
copier cost. Paper is extra. Staples is included in this copier lease.
Okay.
Which is not typical, but, so it is a per copy cost and the copier lease.
And, okay,
And we have one color copier, and that is a little bit higher, but
Right.
only one in the district.
I just was wondering, since we've gone so electronic, why these would keep going up. And I'm trust you guys, I know you guys have looked into it. I was just, like, to this point, like, you're almost like you could buy a copier and throw it out when it, like, because it's so high. It just seems high when you add them all up across the district. So, all right, thank you.
Do you have anything else up to 754?
Let me look. I don't think so, but hold on. I guess not.
Okay. All right, move on to the next page here, 755 to 783. I can throw mine out there first if you want. 773, and it's unfortunate that we even need those, but it's important. But I heard that there might be grants available to do that, and I don't know. I'm not the expert on that, maybe.
Sure, we
somebody
always
else
look
is.
for grants in order to be able to provide, and anytime that they're out there, we certainly will look at where they're at. We are able to utilize those this year and purchase those, so they've been removed from the budget. We're able to utilize some supply money initially, so they will be procured this year. And we're able to get quite a substantial discount from the manufacturer, since they gave us about a 20% discount for being local, since the entity is also local as well.
Thank you. Anybody else between?
Mr. Fry, I
755?
reached out for grant opportunities to several different, like the American Cancer Society and things of that nature, and I have not heard back from any institutions or anything like that. So we did, before we purchased these items, we did reach out for about a month beforehand, so.
All right, thank you. Anybody else, 755 to 783?
Just a question, again, you may have answered this last week. Whenever it says that there was a grossed up number to replace with individual lines, that's been zeroed out, if you will. And then do we know what that grossed up number represented last year? Or in some cases, do you not know what it represented and then just line itemed in what you knew we needed to line item?
That number, excuse me, that number represented so when it said grossed up number to be replaced with individual lines, depending upon what exactly it was representing by the account code number, it would be depicted exactly so to answer that question more directly, instead of tiptoeing around it, most of the time, yes, I knew exactly what it represented and how and what was in that account code. To be sure, though, there was instances where I was not able to pinpoint exactly what was grossed up in that number. So to alleviate any ambiguity in the budget for myself moving forward, I decided to break it out into more descriptive terms and to add more line items and more descriptions in the line items this time in this go around.
when you broke it out, like, for instance, and I'm just giving an example, like 788,
Sure.
which is $58,556.
Yes.
Did the numbers under that represent what you thought that was? Like, sort of, or is it sort of random?
No, so for an example, 58,000, is my microphone on? Yeah, $58,000 for dental insurance is an awful large sum of money for dental insurance coverage for district nurses. So that's one of those numbers that I really could not find out what the grossed up numbers represented. So I decided that's one of those numbers that I had to ungross and to, not ungross, but to kind of break out and give you a better understanding as to what was in that number. So when you add up what was everything in 212, when it says district nurses dental insurance is only $2,381.04, that is the coverage for those nurses that are requesting and that have dental insurance on their policy or that are requesting it. Not all district employees request or have health insurance from us because some of them have it through their spouse. So that's why that's one of those numbers that we're not. I don't know if previously there was grossed up numbers that were inside of there that had all together. Stupid pad. That had all together numbers in there, or if there was different things in there, such as the whole medical insurance, all the vision insurance, or different things of that nature that were put in there. So I wanted to break it out to be more specific. So the numbers that are in there now are exactly what the funding rate is for our self-insurance cost, plus the increase of the 6.8% that our self-funding insurance is requesting for us. So this is actually a very true-to-life number, not, like for example, last year we budgeted 10%. This year we're going at the 6%, and we only increased it by 6%. So there was an artificial 4% increase. This year is a very true-to-life 6.8% in there. So it's much more accurate to true to life as to what our funding, as our self-funder is asking for. So I broke it out as to more specific as to, so if we have, we have 3 district nurses, if only 2 people are requesting health insurance, only 2 people are in there for health insurance.
I understand. I get that about that.
So that's why
But
some of those numbers are looking like, because I know some of the questions you asked in there were,
Yeah.
how could some of these numbers be so far off?
Yeah.
Because some of those numbers were indicative of a grossed up that without seeing exactly what was broken out, like I said, grossed up to be replaced by individual lines, without seeing the individual lines that were actually in that grossed up number. Some of them were easily to tie out, some of them were not. I know in some of the salary questions that you asked earlier as well, some of the salary teachers were misclassified. Some of them, the high school teachers were in the middle school group, and I had to break them out and put them in the right categories. We have a salary report that Dr. Fox had emailed to you that you can look at every staff member's salary.
I didn't see that.
He could email it to you. I don't.
Oh,
he-
okay.
he
I
could-
was gonna say,
Yeah,
I
he can
missed
send
that
it. He
one.
can send it, so you
I
guys can
thought-
review. And that
Oh
also.
my God, did I miss that?
Yeah, no, he has it ready to send out if you guys request it
Yeah.
as the collective group. And that will show you everybody's salary, their health insurance piece, their PSERS requirement, as well as their FICA requirement. And actually, they're broken out into all the groups that we added up together. So it shows you exactly what goes in to these numbers. But this is a very true to life, not doctored up, not padded, not anything. And I wanted to show you the true to life piece that I made that decision in November because I wanted because we were getting hit on the audit thing, because our audit, and then when you do your audit, you're only allowed a 3% variance on your expenditures. For the last 3 or 4 years, the expenditures were coming in much greater than 3%, and that needed to be corrected. We weren't hit on it, but it needed to be corrected in a true to life sense. So that's what this budget was setting out to do.
I don't know how clear the live stream is, but for anyone who's watching this, it's a loud hissing snake-like sound in our system, and that's why people are giving funny looks and things. We're trying to figure out what's wrong with the sound system, that it sounds like there's a giant snake.
It's probably my microphone because I hit it with my hand.
Yes.
Oh, it's not my microphone. So, guys, it wasn't me. First
First time for everything.
I didn't break it on my way out, I promise.
All right,
Seven, oh, did we move on to 7:55?
I'm trying to.
Okay.
Wait, what? We,
7:55 to 7:83?
we already passed that. Yeah, we did.
755 middle school.
But go ahead.
General supplies.
Go ahead, seven.
Principal's office, general supplies.
We jumped back. We already, go ahead and ask what you gotta ask.
Go ahead, Mrs.
755, 783, what do you got?
Line 774, the account code is the high school, but it says ES, which makes me think it's the elementary school office furniture. So what is ES?
That's an error on my part. I'll fix it.
Okay. And then my other question to follow up with that is, we spent $300 on new office furniture last year. Why are we spending $600 this year?
What's the error?
We
Is
did
it
it-
supposed to be high school or?
No. It was supposed to be elementary.
Number's wrong.
Yeah, the number's wrong. And we didn't spend 300 on elementary office furniture last year. We didn't, to my knowledge, we haven't approved any office furniture purchases this year.
Okay.
I think the change is because we have 2 new principals, and we wanted to give them some flexibility to be able to change if they wanted to change their offices up a little bit.
No, that,
Sad part is $600 for furniture. Doesn't go very far, unfortunately.
I'll buy you a nice chair. 2 chairs, 2 nice office chairs.
All right. Are we done up to 783?
780, line item 782. What are various school contests? Again, it's only $200, but I just didn't know
Honestly,
what that was.
that's exactly what it is. It could be a contest that appears throughout the year that we want to be able to enter or take students to. Yeah,
Or something from outside that we have to pay a fee
absolutely.
to.
Yep, thank you.
Do you want to ask one on 783 while we're there, or not?
No, that wasn't in line item for fiscal year 20.
I figured you were just making your way down each number. No? Okay. All right, 784 to 812.
I had just a question on 786 EpiPens. What is our
So-
$600 for EpiPens? I know they expire. I don't know how often they expire.
So they expire every 18 months. The nurse purchases them through a grant from Mylan. However, she's not certain if the grant is renewable every year, so that's like an as needed. So most students bring their own EpiPens, but that is, we are required by PA state code to have them on hand for any emergencies for people that we don't know has any
Correct.
allergic.
So how many do we keep on hand?
2.
2 in each
Two
nurse's
juniors
office?
and 2 adults.
2
so-
juniors, 2 adults.
Yeah, so we have 2 for like kids and 2 for adults.
Okay.
Are you saying 2 packs or
Yeah,
just
yeah,
2?
yeah, 2 packs.
Okay.
So that is what she gets from Mylan every year. Denise Boaz does it. And so that's one thing that she's going to be very, very difficult to replace because she manages that for us. So she applies for the grant through Mylan, and they usually send them to us at cost. They don't charge us anything. But she's not sure if the grant number 1 is good for every year to year. And she's also not sure, and so she budgets them. And she also, by the way, she's not sure of the cost, because EpiPens, because of shortages and drugs, go up in every so
Thank
often.
you.
Yep.
Somebody will be picking that task up, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to clarify, the difference is that in the elementary school, are they keeping 1 each of an EpiPen junior and an EpiPen?
Each school has 2 2-packs.
Right, but
Yeah.
are they, like, is the elementary school keeping all juniors, or are they keeping a junior and a regular EpiPen? Because they're based on weight.
Yeah.
And so if you have an elementary student, like probably your K through 3 are gonna be a junior, but your 4th and 5th graders are gonna be so I'm assuming that's, but I'm just questioning the difference in amounts, because obviously in the high school, they're only gonna need,
Yeah, well, I'm going to defer to Mrs. Boaz, but the information she gave me led me to believe that they do keep the difference in weights in all the buildings, like they have just in case, You know what I mean? But I think there's more, the bigger ones, I think she distributes them by the weight, so I think she keeps them.
Right.
manageable.
So while they're broken down by building for classification codes, it will really be a number, and then we'll purchase and allocate them appropriately based upon the recommendations of the school nurses.
The fact that there's 3 entries for the EpiPen, that's one for each school.
All right, anything else up to 812? Okay, 813 to 841. 829, I was just curious if we could get a little description of what Forecast 5 analytics is and why
Sure.
we expect it to increase by that amount.
It's a data forecast tool that is used for historical purposes that plugs in all of our budget data and expenses data and gives you a graphical analysis of how we do things. I did not utilize it this year because quite frankly, I wasn't even aware John uses it to have it. To be honest with you, I wasn't aware that we had it. It's my fault. I'll take full blame for it, but I plan on bringing Chester up to speed on it. I expect it to increase by $2,000 just by the sake of that everything increases. Let's look at what if thing. We didn't get a formal request or a formal renewal on it, but it's a very valuable tool that a lot of school districts use to help predict and help. It's basically the name is in it. Helps you forecast your budget for 5 years out. So it gives you some data trends and things of that nature. And I think it's a very valuable tool, and John uses it from time to time as well, and helps him as well to help educate you guys.
We certainly can pull a lot of data from it. Looking at local, statewide, all the school districts will be entered into that database. So we can look at comparatives across the board to see what the average spend is per pupil, what the average spend is on really granular items such as athletics or arts, what the millage rates are across the board, what its cyber charter predicted costs are. Sometimes it lags a little bit because, again, it's a repository of information, and it gets that from the state once they enter that information. So it's a really kind of a really neat tool to be able to use to help us when we pull these together and we start making these and having these discussions and conversations. So yes, thank you, Mr. Barr. We will get Mr. Holmes up to speed on Forecast 5. And we don't have the full-fledged. There's different, just like anything else. There's an introductory. There's the Cadillac, and then there's the massive version of it. We have the introduction. It doesn't give us the full features that some of it has, but it allows us to have some of the functionality.
Thank you.
Piggybacking on that, what is the data analytics?
That's the South Central Trust. Innovu was a pharmacy benefit manager that would look at your prescription drug benefit. The trust no longer uses Innovu, so we don't have to pay for it anymore. That's why it was removed.
So that on the most recent has been removed. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Innovu doesn't, I'm sorry, yeah, we removed that. The South Central Trust does no longer use it. That's what SCT stands for. That's our benefit. That was a pharmacy benefit manager that would pull all the pharmaceutical benefits and let you know if you had any cost savings or anything like that to be utilized. They don't use that anymore after it was carved out.
Next one I had was 839.
I
Oh,
have one at 819. I don't know if you want to, can I go back to that?
that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, because instead of scrolling down, I had the question about the audit, the $35,000 for the audit, and I know the answer got back was it was probably in a grossed up number somewhere else. Do we know how that was coded last year? Like, where did we pull that money from last year to pay for them?
The code is correct in the annual audit. The code that I have it in there is correct. I just don't, I haven't been able to locate where the grossed up number would be. It was probably somewhere located in the business services tab, somewhere in the 2511s. I dug out a lot of the things in the 2511 code that it was probably somewhere dug into that. So if you look at some of the reductions in there, I would imagine it was grossed up in that line, because I can't imagine that the annual audit was a cost that was not budgeted for, because it's something that needs to be done every year.
But I guess my question is, and just, this is my stupidity or ignorance, I guess, of how this all works. But like when we paid that, what do we code it to? Does it just go to 2511 or does
No,
it have?
2511 330 it goes to. So it goes into like that code that 819 is coded to. It goes into that code. But overall, when you look at different levels of budgeting, depending upon, it could go in terms of what a person looks at when they're budgeting. They could look at the entirety of 2,500 business services as a function and not divvy down into the object level, which is what the 330 is. And they could say everything's grossed up into the 2,500 function, and that would be, as long as you're not over budgeted in the 2,500 object or function code, then you're okay. So instead of looking at, so when you're looking at the bigger, that's like a level above the function level. So that could be where it was grossed up somewhere into that level. I don't, without looking at what was actually grossed up into all those levels, I don't know, but I wanted to break it out so you could see what the cost of the audit was.
So how did that audit cost change then to this year from last year?
Well, last year, our audit cost our audit cost last year about $47,000
Okay,
overall.
because of the issues.
Right. Now, this year, we had an audit estimate. We have two people that responded to our RFP for the audit, and their cost at any rate ranged from $37,000 down to $25,000. So this $35,000 is a fair representation of how much our audit will cost.
And that's just for the basic single point audit, so there could be additional work that may
Right.
need to be done.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
And I just to get, the only reason I'm asking this stuff is that I'm just trying to figure out what happened last year to this year, and it's hard to do. Not any fault of you guys, because I know that there's been changeovers, right, from year to year to year. I'm just trying to figure out where numbers, I want to make sure that we're not duplicative in where we're putting numbers into the budget and not that it's being done nefariously, but just by a check and balance to make sure we're not putting things in there that are creating a deficit that's bigger than it needs to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm not questioning the fact that we need to have an audit. I'm just trying to figure out where
No,
this
I
money was
understand.
before.
And I just wanted to make sure that, and I did this as a way so that it actually is a double or triple check on not only us, but also everyone else, so that even myself, that we didn't forget anything or miss anything that may have been missed in the past.
My second one on this page was 839, HR supplies, staff engagement. I'll start by saying I'm happy to see this here. I think that it's a very important thing to, make an investment in your staff and their enjoyment of and inclusion and basic engagement to help with retention. But I'm just curious, this wasn't here before. It is now, which is fine by me, but I'm curious if we have any ideas of what we plan to use those funds for. What are the engagement activities going to be, et cetera?
Well, we certainly don't want to release any of the top secrets at this point, no. No, there's a lot of different things that we do from the beginning of the year, welcome back, to the end of the year where we celebrate our retirees. And we want to honor our retirees for all that they do, and we leave them with a gift. And we also have a breakfast where we come together at the end. We also do things throughout the year to also provide, and with that continuation of the fiscal support, we're able to also give some support throughout the year, including different entities for teacher appreciation and other things throughout the year to be able to support. And also, when we look at HR supplies and staff engagement, Ms. Miller has done an excellent job, and I actually just came back from Millersville University, where there's a teacher recruitment or staff recruitment fair that she attended, and because of her attendance there, was able to make a lot of positive connections, at which time now we're able to do some interviews upcoming that are a result of her attendance and collection of resumes at that particular fair.
Thank you.
When she goes to those, do we have a means, or does she have a means to be able to have like a banner, or like, do we have a, a tablecloth? Like, do we have marketing materials for our district?
That's a
for
really
those
great
types of
question. So
things?
we do, and we go back up to some of the reason why we increased media printing, and that Hot Frog was, again, the vendor, and I apologize that the vendor's name was in there, but that is some of the material we use, from folders to handouts to flyers about our district. But yeah, we have a pop-up banner that was purchased earlier. But those types of things we always look for. How do we do a media backdrop in between all of our office work? Those are things that we look for to be able to continue to market our school and tell our story.
All right, anybody else have anything up to 841? Okay. All right. 842 to 870. Somebody else can start if they have anything.
Actually, I just, quick question on 864, $4,000 to inspect our bleachers and the motorized whatever. Now that we're doing a, what do we call it?
Feasibility.
Yeah, feasibility study, and they've already looked at our bleachers, and we're talking about that. Is this cost necessary? And it looks like it was budgeted last year. Was it not used last year, or is it an annual cost of $4,000 to inspect our bleachers? Just if we do decide to replace our bleachers, will we still need to continue to spend that amount? We will. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, it's for our liability insurance. No matter who the carrier is, it's required for our insurance purposes.
I will go ahead and ask, because I'm sure there's a simple explanation, but I was curious about lines 845, 856, 858, and 860. They look the same to me, with just a minor difference in the charge code there. I was curious what head of department BOG is there?
The head of department is Scott Howell. BOG is supposed to be buildings and grounds, but for some reason, I didn't want to call it BAG, so I called it BOG. But it's buildings and grounds.
So why is there 4 separate lines for that?
I'm sorry. So for 845 is his salary.
Okay, and the others are taxes. and fees.
856 is his health insurance, dental insurance. 858 is his medical insurance, and it's just broken out by the different salaries and
Okay.
benefits.
All right.
So as we move into these and we start having a conversation maybe upon a particular, we're going to use titles instead of persons' names as we move forward, just because these are positions that we budget for and not individual people.
Right, so it's just the position, salary, and benefits as they're budgeted.
Okay.
Just for purposes for next year, can we populate those lines with medical, FICA, whatever, so we know? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, instead of just saying head of department BOG, head of department BOG.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I did that with that, but I did not. We could fix that moving forward to make sure that they're
Just that way for next year, when
Yeah,
we use that same line
yeah.
item, we know this is what
right.
it was from year to year.
Yeah, I apologize.
Pete, 856, it's Peasers. Now, I'm assuming that's
No.
the entire
No,
department?
220 is FICA. 220 is
No,
FICA.
I'm looking at line 856.
That's not
Yeah.
Pacers. That's too low for Pacers.
857, I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, 230, 858
I'm assuming
is
that's the
Peasers.
entire department?
Yes.
Yes, 857 is the entire department.
Okay.
Anything that says head of department BOG.
For argument's sake, would it be since you carve out the head of the department, for everything else? Should we have that position's Peasers carved out too, rather than lumped it all in with everybody?
The department would be for, like the maintenance staff, the custodial staff. That's what the,
Correct.
yeah.
What I'm saying is, you have the position of head of department has been carved out for medical, for FICA or whatever. Can we also carve out that position's Peasers as a line item?
It is,
I think
it is
it is
carved
there. It's
out. It is-
858.
It's 858.
Okay, I don't have that on my thing. Okay. Doesn't say on there.
It shows
It doesn't say FICA or Peasers or anything
Has
add
to-
on
have to
it.
change.
That's
Have
the
to change.
problem
That's
is
the one that, okay, so
Yeah, I'll
it is
change it.
already.
the description is not clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll fix it.
Okay, sweet.
Because that position is Act 93 position, is that why that needs to be carved out separately?
There's no particular reason. It was carved out in the original, it was consistent. I tried to keep that that was one of the things I kept consistent because it was carved out in the original document that was provided to me from the last year. So that's why I kept it as consistent with that.
I kind of like it carved out for department heads, you know what I mean? So,
No, wait, who's, all right. Please, nobody edit anything. I will edit. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else up to 870?
Yeah, I'm just changing it to, yeah, I'm changing it to,
All right. Moving along to 871 through 899. I was just curious on 875, what kind of interior building projects we had planned out to warrant the $28,000 increase in the budget?
Sure, so that's, if we look prior, we're going to see some of those projects that included replacements of floors. So we figured that's in all interior replacements throughout the year. So when we take our amount of, so really it comes to roughly, if we were to break that down, it's about $52 a day per building is what we pay to try to maintain the interior parts of our buildings. That's if anything breaks, unexpected repairs. It gives the elasticity certainly of our buildings and grounds team to be able to address anything within the building that needs to be repaired. That's in there. It really significantly, $30,000, sadly, when it comes to repair, isn't going to go very far.
Okay, so basically your explanation makes me believe that the account description on that's just a little off, maybe. Because the ones above it say district repairs and maintenance, exterior building, this should be interior building maintenance,
Yes.
basically? Oh, okay. I saw projects and assumed it was like new stuff we had planned.
What line item number is that?
That is
875.
875.
Because we have to maintain two different spreadsheets, that's why I'm asking.
Yes.
So I guess my question then is what's the difference between district repairs and maintenance and if we're saying interior, basically repairs and maintenance? Like what's the difference really? That, because in essence, if you add the two of those together, you're budgeting $90,000.
That's accurate.
We're breaking it out so you could to see the difference between interior and exterior. There really isn't much of a difference.
So the,
Oh,
Yeah, there's a third line.
so are you,
Oh, I see.
Are you saying that line 873, the district repairs and maintenance, is that interior? Is that exterior? Because then you also have a separate line item for exterior building maintenance. And then you have another line item for interior, basically building repair and maintenance.
So it's safe to take 873, 874, and 875 and combine them together. And those are the elements, but what we tried to do was say that we have repair that needs to occur within the buildings themselves and then in the exterior of buildings that also occur. And then there's going to be district repairs that are going to exceed both interior and exterior. So really, when we add those elements together, yes, it is about $106,600 combined for the overall maintenance.
Just a comment, I see here like some of the flooring replacement and things are areas that we're talking about in our feasibility study, that perhaps in 3 years, 4 years, that area would be renovated. So I'm assuming we would not invest in new flooring in areas that might get totally changed. So some of that is going to be on hold, I would assume, correct?
Dr. Jones, you are absolutely correct, and we did not put in for any replacement flooring in the elementary classrooms as we had a plan prior, due to that fact of discussions of feasibility. The only additional flooring that you may see in here is the flooring that will occur as a request at the flooring at the high school band room. And that flooring, I think, is really past its prime. And I don't believe, I think that will be a good one just to keep. But in addition, there's flooring that's going to need to be repaired due to just some damage that could occur. But in terms of total replacements, that'll be part of the feasibility study, except for as we move down, you'll see it in the high school band room.
At the band room, that's what I was actually thinking of. Now, the 14,000 last year, did that not get spent? Is that so? We didn't.
That was at the middle school band room, actually. We used and we replaced the floor at the middle school band room and the school choir room, not at the high school. So there was no flooring replacement at the high school.
So 899, what building is that? Line item 899.
899 is actually a district line item,
That's what I thought.
but the band room flooring replacement will be earmarked for the high school.
Okay.
The last year's flooring was at the middle school.
Okay.
I'm going to change it to reflect the high school code, though.
And if we do that, that 14,000 probably is, I don't know that it matters, is not appropriate, because that was, we didn't have $14,000 budgeted for the high school band floor last year, right?
That's accurate. We had it at the district number. I don't think is inappropriate at this point. Do you? We can leave it as is.
It's fine, it just,
So,
Okay.
so if we have a repair, an interior building repair in either the elementary school, middle school, high school, that is going to be coded to that line item. So that next year when we get this, we'll know how much was used of that $30,000, right? Like, we'd be
Well,
able to look in next year
when you
and
look
go,
at those line items, so look at the account long codes for exterior, interior, and district repairs. That account number is all the same. So really what you're going to see is how much was expended out of $106,600. We can go through and you'll see everything that was purchased, and we can
no, I
provide
don't want
that.
that.
But-
I guess
I hear what she's saying, is that you're separating it out for us in the budget, and that it's 60,000 for district repairs, 16,000 for exterior repairs, and 30,000 for interior. And I hear what you're saying, is that it does gross up to 106,000. But for us to have a comparison for next year of whether 30,000 is enough for interior repairs, if you are going to put it in and gross it up as the 106,000, otherwise, I would say just gross them up and put it in as district building.
And we certainly can do
And
that.
put it as interior and exterior.
And we certainly
You know
can
what I
do
mean?
that.
Like-
I do, because sitting here on March 28th, I have no idea what's going to happen in July 28th
Right.
or September 28th,
Correct,
or
yeah.
what happens.
Yeah.
We're making the best prediction model that we can.
Right.
And knowing full well that a lot of things could have a lot of different variations. And please, and I think you made up a great point, Dr. Jones, there's not a lot of major projects in here.
Right.
And capital projects, we would call it. So any capital projects that may break, we're going to need to come to you to utilize capital funds for
Right.
with requests.
Yeah, I think for, like Marcy, she explained that perfectly, because if it's just gonna get coded to a big number, right? Next year, if we change the interior building to $40,000, we don't really know if we used that towards that or not. But if the number goes up to 120 and we've used 110, then we understand why it went up to 120. Does that make sense? So it's like, I know it sounds like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth because we want things carved out, right? And I think if you're going to carve it out, then it needs a different code. Like, it needs to have a separate code number, so that when you buy, build to the interior, you do build interior. If you guys don't want to do that, then,
So these account codes, what you're seeing is what gets entered that we have to account for under, if you look at the spreadsheet at the top, the PDE charts of accounts, we don't create these. We can't manufacture these. These are created for us, that we have to fit within the elements here. We can combine these because they're already combined. For the description purposes here in this, we can gross that number up if that's what you're saying, and we can call it basically what it is, district repairs and maintenance. And we'll take the interior, exterior in that one and combine them all together, and that's completely okay.
but again, this is, again, my ignorance on all of this. So what are all of the other zeros for there? Isn't that an ability to create subcategories, or no?
Some of the long code is for funding sources. So for an example, if we got the money from the state, federal government, or local sources. Some of them are for if we were breaking it out via school, like if we're breaking it out and we're spending it via the elementary, middle school, or high school. Some of them are for if we were breaking it out via at a grade level, like the 2 digits for like a grade level, if we were spending it for elementary, first, second, third, fourth, kindergarten, whatever. And some of them were for like a 4 cent, the last 4 digits are like for a cost center. If we were breaking it out, for an example, if we were doing it on behalf of the Black Hawk Association or something similar of that nature. It is not something that, or something more, another allowable under the school code or under the chart of accounts, under the acceptable chart of accounts. There are something, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I broke it out as is similar to what Scott has, after discussing it with Scott, what he would anticipate breaking inside our external. It is generally one account code, so we can put it together into one group and say we spent $106,000, but then we're back to kind of where we were with apples and oranges again with this type of thing, where if I put it back into one group, then you're looking at saying, okay, well, we budgeted, we didn't budget, we're not looking at this as a kind of a similar thing. But what Scott does a very good job at, he'll say, well, I spent $16,000 or $17,000 fixing stuff inside, but I spent 80 or 90 grand fixing things outside. For example, fixing, whatever happened outside. So for an example, we had to dig up a sewer line to check for a leak because we were having a water leak in our school. We couldn't identify where the leak was coming from. That would be something that would fall under this for external repairs and maintenance. So it's something that would similarly fall in that kind of category.
Right, but the only person that would know that,
Would be
Scott.
With Scott, and he could
Right,
provide,
and-
and he could provide a report that would
Yeah, and
show that.
and I get, if we're bound by PDE, then I guess there's nothing we can do. It just seems like you should have a code that you should be able to bill it to, that he would know he spent that much money on external stuff, that it's not just you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because that would certainly help in building the budget if we knew what was actually it coded to. Not every little screw, but like
Yeah.
exterior, interior, whatever, just like you have it.
I could have Scott and I'll sit down with Scott tomorrow, and we'll see if there's a way that either we combine all these things back together and tie them back together, and then just focus on building it more tightly together, and not grossing it up, but I want to say tying it back together tighter. Or if there's a way that he can track interior, exterior stuff, and we'll get back, and we'll have a report, or I'll have someone provide a report to you at the caucus meeting on the 4th.
All right, are we good up to 899? Okay, moving along, line 900 to 928. I'll go ahead and start. It's probably one of those, either it was hidden somewhere else before and we didn't know about it, or just change codes. 909 co-curriculars. Is that, I think you briefly explained it to me, but.
So there's a really, as we look through the 22-23 budget, there's a real good chance that the co-curriculars were not included in that particular budget.
Okay.
But again, so my follow-up to that again is how did we code that when we paid them? Because we clearly paid them last year. Like, where did that money come out of in this last year's budget?
Well, when we went through the budget, we coded them where, hang on, what line number is it?
909.
909, 1032, 10, 132 is where they came out of. When my payroll person went to enter the salaries for the first batch of co-curriculars that came out of, she noticed there was $0 put into that particular budget item in the upload. And so because of that, there was no money budgeted in that section for it. So there was a good chance that there was no money put in the budget for that particular code, so something that was missed. I believe because of the bottom line of how the budget was constructed in historical purposes based on how the other budgets were constructed, I believe it may be grossed up in somewhere other and on some other category or somewhere in student activities or something of that nature. But I can't seem to find, without any notes or any other kind of documentation, I can't seem to find where it is grossed up. But based on the fact that it's a substantially large number, I believe it's grossed up somewhere else. And the fact that your budget is still trending coming in at $500,000 to $600,000 below your budgeted expenditures, I still believe that to be true, because the co-curriculars are coming out of the budget.
Right.
So I don't know where exactly, I can't give you a direct answer as to where it's coming from. But in this particular budget, the one that I'm putting my stamp on, the one I'm doing, and the one that I'm presenting to you, I'm laying it out here and showing you where it is. That also drives the fact of 910 and 911 as to when there was questions as to why those student activities, FICA and retirement were increased. It's because I properly coded for those student activities, co-curriculars, their retirement and their FICAs went up. So that's the reason why they went up as well. So wherever this came from, it's in there somewhere. I just don't know where it is because we're still trending at a $500,000 below budget line item, but I believe. So it's somewhere in here, I just don't know exactly where.
And being the
So-
person who was here last year, I can speak to the incredible amount of time that went into building the 22-23 budget. I'm fairly confident to say I'm not fairly confident to say, let me walk that back. Looking at the trends, as Mr. Barr just explained, and where we are coming in at, and the overall budget number versus previous budget numbers, it's a really good fact that it's in there. I just can't necessarily unpack that number. So anybody listening, you will be paid your co-curricular that has that. It's just now we're clearly demonstrating where that is. And then moving forward, we'll make sure that it's delineated and we can see the capture between the two. And just because there's a co-curricular, we budget for all of them. It doesn't mean that they're all filled and that they all have students in there and they all are active memberships. So not all of
Correct.
them will get paid.
So, Mr. Bard, is it correct in understanding that because there are several things on here that it appears that maybe we've budgeted for based on what you're saying, and looking at our monthly profit and loss statement, if we look at that expense report that you provide us, we should be able to go through and easily see where there are things that are a very high expenditure because they were budgeted at zero, and you're coding them to a line that was budgeted at zero.
Correct. That's,
Okay.
yeah, that's.
So we
and
should be
that's-
able to cross-reference that with this budget.
Correct, and that's why that's why this budget document is looking the way it does, because I'm giving you this, when you look at the 23, now I won't be here to see this through, although I will be watching from afar, that this will be a true detail budget form as we go through.
And again, I'm not going to sit here and honestly not say that moving forward, there can't be any more misses, ever. Because here we are, it is May 28th. We do our best
March. Don't
March,
rush it.
sorry. Ooh.
I mean, I'd be missing Ray's birthday if it was May.
I mean, it is still clear, just as we are making adjustments that you'll see as we go through certain other lines, that there are again, it's a continuous process as we begin to refine it. And there's a good possibility that, like anything else, when we're starting to deal with thousands of lines, that there's something that could be inadvertently omitted. And it would not be purposeful, and it would not be intentional. And nevertheless, we will try to be as transparent and as open as possible with it.
And I think for me, I just want to make sure not that something's not being omitted, but that it's not being duplicative. So that it looks like we're building a budget that's more deficit laden than it really is. you know?
100% agree too. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to jump around here a little bit just to cover the ones that I have notes for.
Before you do that, Jonathan, because I think mine might tie in on 910, I just had a quick question. When it says student activities, FICA student activities retirement, does that include the co-curriculars?
It
Yes,
does.
yes. And
So I
so,
wonder if we could do like a slash there so that it looked, because would that be like co-curriculars and coaches
yes.
and everything else?
Yes, it includes all the coaches and all the co-curriculars.
If you could maybe put down there like a slash co-curricular for benefit purposes for next year, so that we know that
I'm
that's
gonna
all
do it,
together.
we're gonna do it right now because
Okay.
because the anonymous sheep is typing over here on the Google spreadsheet.
Because that was a bit confusing to me. I think that way we'll know next year, okay, this is the retirement that FICA for. And I know I asked the question about that we pay Peasers on coaches that are not teachers, on part-time salaries of 33%.
Yeah, roughly. Right.
33.99, as I've calculated it. Do they know that they have money going into a state retirement system?
Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, some people actually buy back service when they like. So you have a chance to buy service when you get like when you get into the part-time gig, you can actually buy service back when you go. So you can buy actually service time in, and that's part of some of the expense that we have to also budget for because we actually on the hook when they buy service back sometimes. So. They actually do, they are aware of it. It is a very small amount when you think about it. When you think of because I know your question was like, if they're only making $2,000 and they have to pay 30%, or it's only 7.5% they get deducted. But if it's 7.5%, it's not a lot of money, but they are aware of it.
What is only 7.5%?
Their deduction out of their pay is only 7.5%.
For FICA?
No, for their Peasers
So
deduction.
they have a deduction that comes out of their pay too for Peasers?
Yeah, it's 7.5%.
They have a contribution rate.
Okay.
You were right, that was my next one, was about 910 and 911. The labeling on those was a little off, but I think I knew, so thank you for asking that. 905, building interior cleaning equipment, jumping very large percentage. Are we looking to replace something, or we just expecting that cost to increase that much?
So the building machines, the cleaning machines, we have to replace, Scott, if you want to talk about the cleaning machines, because I think we talked about that.
All right, so we're just at that point in the cycle, basically. It's unfortunate since it's already a bad budget year. And then, I hate to even ask, but 902, the tractor, I know you really got your eyes on that thing, really want that thing, and they say it could replace a few pieces of equipment. Are those pieces of equipment really on their last leg and dying and need replaced, or is that potentially, a fairly large chunk of money we could maybe pull from here if we don't necessarily need it, since we are where we are.
Well, certainly, we've looked at multiple different, and we can kind of tag team this a little bit. So we looked at multiple things when it came to this piece of equipment. The first thing is the trade-in value of a skid steer and the tractor, to be able to have now one that we only need to service instead of the two that we previously would need to service. The functionality of the utilization hopefully would decrease some of our rental costs in the future, but it has a lot of different functionality when it comes to the ability with snow removal, the ability to use that also, really importantly for forks. That is the important function when it comes to having the ability to utilize a forklift with the power needed to be able to offload and load. Having a forklift set aside, even looking at a used forklift, is roughly $25,000 to $35,000 just for one that's small enough, and then that only has one particular purpose. So I think what we get is the maximization of a piece of equipment. Like we always talk about, how can we make sure that something has multiple functions? And this is something that has those multiple functions. So I'll stop talking and turn it over.
It's a good idea. All right. Thank you for the explanation. My last one is multiple of these line items for Mr. Quigley. Did some of our coaches' salaries really go up that much, or do we just expect them to?
So what we did was we took every coach in the program and rolled them into one particular
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, for instance, basically, we lump the program. So if you look at coach salaries boys basketball, and you go down to coach
Oh,
salaries junior high
never
boys
mind.
basketball,
I see it.
yeah,
I see it.
That's what it is.
All the junior high disappeared and
Yeah,
they're
so
lumped up.
basketball is all levels, girls field hockey, all
Got it.
levels.
I probably saw that when I was at home reviewing this. That's why I didn't highlight
No,
those
no,
rows.
but that's fine, because you look at, it would have,
Yeah.
I look at things as programs, and
Makes-
the whole way through instead of.
Yep. All right.
I had a question about, and I don't know if this is an executive session question or not. I think I asked on the line item where we're using the coaches matrix. You know, we get that line every time we approve coaches. They're approved as per the coaches matrix. I would like to show of hands on the board of anybody on the board who has actually seen the coaches matrix. We approve them all the time. The last one I saw was from 2014, 2015. Has it changed? You know, how are we?
No, I don't believe the coaches matrix has changed at this time, and we definitely use the coaches matrix. Mr. Quigley and Human Resources does a great job, Ms. Miller, of making sure that a new coach that comes in is applied to the matrix, as well as assistant coaches. And then that matrix that I also have here and that's applied and then gets approved. So, no, I don't believe there's been any changes to the matrix.
And quite honestly, that's one of my
I think it's on the website.
projects I've been looking at, trying to do this with programs and everything else, because when you look at it, it's based on a tier system. Part of that tier is what season your sport's in session, and it's supposed to be number of kids and length of season, and whether you generate revenue, which none of them do, and all those types of deals. And your head coach is liable to get an increase, but there's nothing in there for increases for assistants. There's nothing. I mean, it's cumbersome to say the least, and that's where we get some of these different numbers. So just to give you a heads up, I've already talked to Dr. Fox, and these are one of the things I'm looking at, next year or the year after, or bringing to you guys next year, is it would really be nice if we would say, here's the lump sum for that program. And then if a head coach says, you know what, instead of having 2 assistants, I'd really like to have 4 paid assistants. Okay, here's your lump sum of money. It's not going up. And then you hear, and by doing that, we as the district actually get a little bit more control over the coaches, because now being we pay them versus just a pure volunteer, we have some, hey, you're not showing up, or you're not, then we can have a little bit of umbrella control. Okay, so that's sort of why. Yeah, so when you look at the matrix, I mean, it comes down to, well, for example, spring sports head coaches are very underpaid compared to, fall head coaches. And now the one thing it does do is that, like, girls soccer and boys soccer, the head coach gets the same thing, that has to be. And all the junior high coaches and assistants are pretty much all the same number, and they're flatlined. I mean, they don't get an increase, and that comes into some issues. Mr. Lehman, you wanted to.
I think it's in the teacher's contract. I don't think that we
The
can just
matrix?
change it. Just the
No, co-curriculars are, but not the coaches. Yeah, that's a whole nother,
Do you know where?
that's a whole nother thing.
Like, do you have any idea, like, where this tiering comes from? Like, does that,
When I started here, and J.E. Smith was here, and we're back 22 years, they were in the process, and I think J.E. changed it at one point. And then when Mark Yoakum was here, it was an undertaking that he was given, and they came up with this. So I don't know if he went to other districts and looked at, this is how it's done here, this is how it's done here. Because I know even among my AD colleagues, I ask. I know Juniata does the lump sum thing. Travis Kesey and I are pretty good friends, but other places have this, well, it's ranked and blah, blah, blah. And, because, and our personal experience, when I took over as a baseball coach, and even after years of experience, and we brought in a brand new soccer coach with no experience, blah, 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 and it was like $1,000 more than I was after like 4 years. I'm going, something's not legit here.
right?
And well, you don't generate revenue. And I used to have the argument, again, this was just from my experience, when the head football coach was AD, and I gave Scotty a hard time, and going, part of this is because you're supposed to have a big program. I have more players in my baseball program than you had on the football team.
Right. Yeah, and I like even
And
this
there
year
are
now-
things in there, and there are things in there I'd like to correct. And then one of those things, just throw it out there, so it was like postseason. Well, if you're into postseason, there's no additional stuff for your additional time. And we're not talking a lot, but some schools will say, like, well, hey, if you make postseason, the coaches each get $100 more.
Yeah.
Something like, just because of the added time. So there's nothing like that in there. I think assistants should get increases at some point, or again, why some sports get X amount of assistants and other sports don't have that same number of assistants. And so, I mean, there's,
Okay.
among sports, like among soccer, it's equal. Softball and baseball are equal. I mean, as far as assisting, no matter your genders and things like that. But there are some that we just sort of carried over from years past.
So I guess what I'm hearing you saying is we need to you personally would like to take it upon yourself to lead revisiting this.
Yes.
And I,
Yeah.
and
And I'm
our-
not looking at huge number
And I-
monies increases, but
No, but I think
compartmentalize
we're
it.
all in favor of, with the superintendent's blessing, like letting you take that ball and run with it. And I assume that would have to be board approved eventually.
Yeah.
But I think you've made your case that it's antiquated, needs to be changed. And I think we need
Okay.
to ask. the
And just so you know,
superintendent
that's something I
direct you
talked to
do
Dr.
that.
Fox about. I was waiting till the end of the year to ask for permission because this is going to be like one of my summer projects to,
Yeah, no, I-
because it's not,
Wise.
it's not something you just sit down and do in an afternoon.
Because like I was even looking at this year, track and field is much larger than we've had in the past.
Correct. And
there's that-
we've talked about changing the structure of that to one head coach and for assistants
Right.
for more, instead of just 2 and 2 and,
Well, like I noticed
know.
on the matrix, there's like this $12 per student over the number of 20 on
and
a
that's,
team.
and honest to God, all my, that's never been, and that was probably thrown in there years ago. But then again, too, well, that punishes a cross-country coach if you only have 6 kids to begin with.
Yeah, well, it looks like it looks like you pay up to 20, but then
Yeah.
anything over 20, you get
That's
this
what I'm saying. I mean, it's
bonus.
just, yeah, so it's not,
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so I get it. No, thank you for that.
okay.
Sometimes things that are so complicated need to just kind of remain simplified and understood.
Or the old idea of coaching language, we need to kiss it. Let's keep it simple.
Well,
stupid.
and like, yeah, and like I said, from when I first got on the board, we were often approving these coaches things, and I never was provided a copy of the coaches matrix, so I was voting on something I'd never really seen, and I had asked for it a couple of years ago, and I have it, but it's from like 2014. Like, it's, that was the last time it was looked at, so I was just curious if we were still following that.
All right. Does anybody else have anything up to line 928? Okay, hearing none, move down to 929 through 957.
I guess I have a question about some of the game help. I don't know, like, it looks like there wasn't game help for some of the sports previously.
Correct. Baseball and softball.
And then it looks like football game help went up almost $2,500. Like, why is that? More home games or something, or a lot more home games?
Well, the one, and I would look at it, it sort of comes down to how many people I use for security and things like that. Football and track are the biggest expenses for game help. Football, I actually added security folks at different places around the track and things like that as crowds increased. And I can go back and look. Part of that might have been because we had that double game, so I had to pay some people there. And when I did these, I literally I keep a spreadsheet of all my expenses, and I literally just do a tab add. So it's very possible that could have been skewed by $600-700. Okay, but when I start adding in, student gate security and student section security and flagpole in this corner, and I mean, I actually added individuals for coverage.
So what, this number that we're seeing budgeted for next year is reflective of the actual amount you actually spent this year. Is that what you're saying?
Plus, I basically took everything and added a little bit because next year game help, it goes up to $61 an event versus 60. So it comes down to, but numbers wise, people wise, I really try to do as little as I can. Like basketballs are 6 people. I have 2 tickets, 2 doors, and 2 people working the table. And wrestling is very much similar. Junior high, we don't do any. The reason there's an increase in baseball and softball is looking ahead. When I was baseball, I just took care of it. Like in softball, I'm the announcer this year, and I have a parent who does baseball. And when I was the coach, I kept the book along with my son or one of my assistants, and they still do the same thing. Softball, they have a parent comes in, he keeps the book. When I leave, that may change, and you might have to have someone be paid to be the softball announcer. That might not be, the next person. So I added those in because I was asked last year, oh, we just assumed you did. That's because I did. So I'm thinking down the road, well, the next person might not do all that stuff, that I find enjoyable and I like doing, so.
Is the increase in field hockey then because we're now in the stadium and we now
Yes,
have an announcer?
field hockey, I never had to have security before.
Right.
And I never had to have tickets. I mean,
Right.
so now I have to have 2 people with tickets, I have 2 security, and then Mary Ellen still does the announcing and all
And so
that.
some of that increase of cost is now going to be offset, while not a ton, by the tickets that you have money coming in, right? I know it's not a lot, but some.
Correct, and I budget expenses not figuring any gate, because, again, $2 a head, you're not generating much gate. So that just goes into general fund, and it's not, I mean, it would take me 20 minutes here to add up it.
But where does the gate go? Just into the general fund?
Yes.
And there's no attempt to offset anything athletically, it just goes into the general fund?
Yeah, the only thing we offset from gate would be like when I had the JV field hockey play day. So we charged admission for that, and I charged teams to be here, so that offset, literally, hey, look, this is going in, and this is offsetting our game costs and the officials' costs. But other than those things, junior high black duels, we did it that way. When we host anything for PICO or TVL, the TVL takes care of all of our game expenses and officials and things like that. The only time we make money there is for the boosters. PICO events, Perry County Athletic Directors Association, they take care of all the expenses. And then any profit goes to them. Okay, we're just the hosting school, but it doesn't cost us, it costs, lights and things like that, but as far as and officials and security and all that, that's all covered by the associations that are here. Or junior high Blackhawk duels, that money covers everything, and then the boosters get part of the gate, and we get part of the profit as well.
And this is probably a little bit off topic, but just because we're in this zone right now, and you mentioned that our track and football are the ones that require the most.
Cost the most,
cost
yeah.
the most.
Just because number of people.
Can we charge for track meets? I mean, because right now you got 80 kids on a track, 70 kids on a track team, which means their parents are all coming. And I understand that, like, your throwers are going to be outside, but if you're coming in the gate,
We're going to charge for softball and baseball
we charge for field hockey and soccer.
because they're in the stadium.
So is track.
But in the fall, when we charge, do we have any other events not in the stadium? We never charged for field hockey when it was outside the
No,
stadium.
but what I'm saying is, if you're coming into the stadium to watch the track meet, charge them $2. It's $2. It'll help to offset some of this extra game. I realize it doesn't come to that thing, but it's going in the general fund. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm a track mom, and I'd be willing to pay $2.
Because that's the league things. But they're actually, to lack of a better term, they're fundraisers for TVL and PICO. Okay, and you can offset, but again, you also have added expenses. I now have to have tickets, I now have to have security, I have to.
I don't think, I don't think it's worth it. You're gonna get,
Well, another argument you're going to get is then, because you're going to have track and say, well, you don't charge for baseball, you don't charge for softball.
you're gonna get chicken squat out of this, and you're gonna have a lot of bad feelings from people, and we're gonna look like a bunch of cheapskates is what it's gonna be.
The argument with field hockey and soccer, though, is there is nothing else in the fall. I mean, we don't charge for cross country because it's outside the stadium. No, we do not charge for junior high sports. And again, charging for junior high sports would cost you money.
So I guess it comes down to, as a board and as a district, we have to figure out how we are going to maintain the cost of the stadium and the turf, which we have to have if we're hearing that we're not generating any revenue even from ticket sales to be able to support that, because there are ongoing maintenance costs.
There were ongoing maintenance costs just to maintain that.
Now,
grass field,
now,
too,
here's
that
one
were all-
thing,
That were
and-
probably more than the turf, so.
Right.
And here's one thing
So it's not
I'm
like
going
we're
to say right
losing.
now too, so you know what I'm saying. And I've had many people from other districts say how great it is what we charge at $2 a head, and that's, you know, it's a pittance. The first time anyone says we need to raise ticket prices, here's going to be my response. Dr. Jones, you said the question, where do our gates go? General fund. Just go. Where do you think the people who aren't paying $2, where are they paying that extra money that they now have when they come to an event? Concessions, which is the boosters. Where's the boosters' money go? Right back into the programs to the kids. So my argument is always, by keeping our gate costs low, we actually benefit our kids much more because the boosters are spending things, whether it's gear or wear, something like that. The kids get direct benefit versus just an increased gate putting it in the general fund. And again, that was that whole idea of we had lower gates to bring people back and increase boosters and all that. So, and every booster program will tell you that they're doing better now than they were years before, just because of the amount of crowds and the money that people are willing to pay the boosters because they now have that ability.
I'm good with all that. Everybody else? All right. I believe we were at up to 9:57.
I had a question, just a quick question about 944. So the laundry services for football, what are we washing there?
What's that?
What are we washing?
Every time they wear a game, we do the game pants and the jerseys, and part of that is sanitation and sewing and repair. So in football, because of the contact, rips and tears, the service sews them. You get blood, they're sanitized. That happens every week in a football game, where other sports that doesn't occur. And actually the cost of those uniforms is much more that in the 6-year cycle, it's best to maintain those because of the actual wear and tear versus a basketball jersey, which takes wear and tear, but you don't have the constant physical pounding and things like that. And just so you know too, my philosophy when it comes to buying uniforms is that we need to buy quality stuff so it lasts. That's going to, I have an issue with softball uniforms right now that I know when they purchased those, they weren't real good quality. Now, we're about halfway through we're not even quite halfway through the life cycle of those. But, and also, so you know, when I do the uniforms and I do things that are very traditional, knowing that if you need to replace them, they're always available versus some of these wild things that you can't go back or the font's gone. Or, so like when you look at, like our football uniforms are pretty traditional. Baseball is ultra traditional. Our basketball, when we replace it, they will be traditional so we can replace them as needed versus, having to wait 3 months because that's no longer available.
I just have a question. Is the laundry service only for football? It's not for any of
Correct.
our other sports? Okay.
And part of that comes down to because football you play once a week.
Okay.
And it's opposite. So they show up Tuesday mornings, we bag it, they pick it, they take it, and then because traditionally, and then they bring it back Thursday evening or first thing Friday morning. And then we have it. Basketball, it's tough because, well, you can play back to back. You could play,
Yeah.
Monday, Wednesdays, and the turnaround time is not.
No, there's some other questions I can talk to you about that came.
What did we decide with the baseball backdrop?
Yeah, we were able to get a quote, and we believe we're able to go and get that repaired, and we'll get it repaired now, and that item will not be in the budget moving forward.
So, will the cost of the repair be covered somewhere else in our existing budget?
The cost in the repair will be in our existing budget, which is line number 956, 103250, 430, from last year's fiscal year '23. And we believe that it will be just under, either 4 or just under 4,000. We're not modifying what's there, but securing what's there. And that's the good work of Mr. Howell. Yep. Mr. Howell, we were talking about the backstop and securing and fastening the backstop.
And how long do we expect it to last before we need a new one?
I don't have that answer, sir.
And the original one was 10,000, correct? Think.
That was an original number. We didn't have a specific quote. But yeah, it's around $10,000 to get the whole system repaired, or replaced, I should say. Sorry.
It sounds questionable to me. I know other people don't agree with me, but you're going to fix an old one for 4,000 and have to repair it or replace it again somewhere down the line. Why not just go with the 10K and get it done with?
The length of time, I think will be okay, Dr. Rush.
Okay.
Because the left part that is the concern, they're actually refitting with bigger pipe sections. It'll make it sturdier. So that was the issue with. It wasn't really done right the first time, would be the easiest way to say it. So by correcting it, we're going to be able to extend it much longer than. In other words, there's no sense to have to replace the entire, when we found out it's only this one section. That if we make it right, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Can you talk to us about the fence covers, the windscreens for athletic field? It was 3,000 last year, 3,000 this year, but.
Okay, well, and I was talking about this. I thought that was whacked out of last year's. That's why I didn't order any. So we literally, I can go out and get some because it was still there, and we can just do away with the request for next year. It's basically, it's almost, it's for wind. It's also for sight line along the scoreboard end of the stadium for baseball, so you can, it's actually for a sight line and this end, and it's more for not only to knock the wind down a little bit on the playing surface, but it's like a privacy issue too, so we can,
But it's a once and done thing?
Yes.
And
then we put it up in the
now?
fall, we take it down in the winter, we put it back up in the spring, take it down when we don't need it yet. And it's like the heavy see-through mesh type stuff. I'm not getting anything printed. I just
No.
wanted a black.
But we could take it out this year because you got the money from last year that you could.
And
go
I'm
ahead
gonna,
do.
yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And
Thank you.
I thought it was out last year. That's why I didn't act on it. That's why we didn't have it started this year. I just found that out, so that's.
All right, I believe that gets us through 957. Moving on, 958 through 986.
No, sorry.
Can I make a suggestion, or is it possible to move team budgets bocce down to where the other team budgets are, so that they're all together? Bocce is up at 965, and then the other team budgets start at 978.
Oh, you know what? There was a problem when I was formatting the sheet, and it wouldn't let me put it down there.
Okay,
I'll move it down now. I think Christine fixed it for me.
okay.
If she didn't, then we'll have a problem, but let's see if I can move it. Christine, I'm just gonna hit the undo button because something bad just happened.
And Quiggs, just backing up, the new line item for bocce coaches, is there one coach?
From my understanding, that was put in, so if we have two, we would split between,
Okay. I just didn't know like what, because do we not have a coach this year? Did we just have a volunteer this year?
yeah, 'cause the first year Special Olympics sets it up and they give you $1,000 stipend. Then everything's supposed to be volunteer.
Okay.
How did the bocce team do? I tried to make it down to,
They finished sixth.
They finished sixth in the state,
oh, cool.
yes.
Out of 400 and some teams, is that what it was? I forget the
I
exact
heard a
number.
lot
I
of
went down through.
conflicting numbers, but
Yeah.
yeah, out of a lot.
Yeah.
Out of a lot, inaugural year. Heck of a job those volunteer coaches did and those
I had sent her the website.
student athletes.
I called somebody.
Anybody else have anything up to 986? All right, 987 through 1003.
997 gone, based on what I just heard.
Yes. It's gone on my sheet. It must,
That's correct.
I want to touch on 1003 really quick, the cafeteria expenses. The general fund expenses charges the cafeteria. We have excess cash in our cafeteria fund that needs to be expended, so that's why that line item has been dispersed and taken out of the general fund.
Thank you.
So just to note, fiscal year '23 adjusted budget to fiscal year '24 adjusted budget, the difference between the two is $422,504.35. Increase, sorry.
Could you please repeat that number again?
Yes, the difference between fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '24's preliminary budget is an increase of $422,504.35. Between fiscal year '24 and our projected revenue, that is not including any projected revenue that could come through from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the governor's proposed budget, we are looking at a $2.23 million deficit at this point.
And it looks like that number has shrunk about $47,000 since we, as a board, started looking through the budget with you all. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, guys.
I know you have, are you guys going back over these other?
Yep,
Because
I'm about to get there.
okay, I didn't, because I had questions about previous things, but
All right, so that completes our review through line 1 through 1003. At this time, I'd like to jump back and give Dr. Fox and any other administration members an opportunity to go over agenda item 5, discussions, item B, and your specific follow-up items there.
Sure. Thank you very much. Line number 157, which was the iPad cases, and I give Mrs. Montosh a tremendous amount of credit for this. She was able to work very closely with our senior teachers that have senior homerooms and began to survey and looked at real-time data about the cleanliness and the usefulness of the cases. So what we're able to do is look approximately about 1/4 of the entire cases need to be replaced. And therefore, we also would like to replace all the screens and those plastic screen protectors. They get scratched up as well. So we're going to look at removing the 7,200, and we propose 3,600.
Is that change in the number we just went over? No.
No, sir. It will be.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Line 350 and 346, PT and OT, and Mrs. Bresty did a great job. Line 346, occupational therapy, and thank you for the question last time. It allowed us the chance to look at this closely. Actually, what we're projecting right now currently is line 346 will be increased to $100,000 for projected revenue. That was increased on our spreadsheet. Line 350 for physical therapy or PT, should be $40,000, and that number has been reflective of the current spreadsheet. Line 499 was questioned attendance clerks. Where were they located prior? Looking at the previous year's budget documents, we believe it was line 1521 and line 1523. So it was earmarked in those previous lines. Line 571, which was Fitbits, what we're going to do in terms of Fitbits, these Fitbits are used, or these electronic tracking devices for, I shouldn't say electronic tracking devices, that sounds terrible. These tools for physical fitness, sorry, are used for our Black Hawk Academy students. And what they really, they're used not just for the theory portion, but the activity portion. And they will register the amount of steps taken, the amount of miles logged. They'll look at the heart rate. But what we're going to start doing very closely is, historically, we budget about 5. Some of them stop working. They're pretty finicky. But what we're going to start doing is numbering them and making sure that we receive them back. And if we don't receive them back, there'll be an obligation that will be added, just like there's obligations for other pieces of equipment that are borrowed as their district property. So those small tech wares, I'm sorry, they're not electronic tracking devices for physical fitness. Yeah, thank you. Line 192, esports lab. We're gonna delay that and be hopeful to do a proposal in the future again. You're gonna hear that coming up at our caucus meeting, but we're gonna delay the $6,000 and hopefully, as we continue to get great support from the Black Hawk Foundation, hopefully write an additional grant proposal for that as well. And that aligns with 593, as we'll look at an application also for either partial or full for the media center proposal as well to the Black Hawk Foundation. And again, we appreciate all of their support. Because of their tremendous support, and we were able to reduce a lot of items that otherwise, including trips and otherwise different things that wouldn't have been in the budget because of their great support.
What was the esports line again?
Esports line, I believe, was line 192, and it was for $6,000, and it was to continue the increase in the amount of gaming computers for our esports lab.
I guess, why would we remove that?
When we look at overall cost savings, we thought we could delay it and look for continued support of the foundation. We do not have to.
Well, I'm just curious, like, what will that do as far as the number of computers?
So currently, right now, we have 6. That would
So
have
we
gave-
only have 6, that would give us 9, so we would only have, but we would still only go back to 6?
Right, they already have
we currently have 6. What the
we
additional
don't-
funding would do is probably give us an additional 3 more for a total of 9. It would continue to build out our lab.
I guess I would argue to keep this in, only selfishly because I have a student who's involved in esports, and we just created a bocce ball team, and we have an equal amount of money in here for bocce ball, and if we're going to have esports as a team, I personally don't want to cut that. But it's a very personal thing for me, especially since we've put no money into esports as a district at all. It's all come through grants, and it's all come through help from others. So I would argue that we not cut that.
Are putting money into an esports club. You missed that.
We aren't?
There's $1,000 that's towards the end of the budget lines, and that was for subscriptions. So a lot of these games will require subscriptions to be paid and to be used.
So you would need that anyway, right?
Yes. So I am completely 100% okay with putting it back in, or it wouldn't have certainly been in the first place. So I'm okay with that. If that's the will of everybody, we can that number back in.
Again, I'm just thinking, and again, I'm thinking selfishly, but we just hired a new tech person, and one of the things we said to this technology teacher is we want you to be able to create a competitive esports club. So, I mean, as a district, if we're not budgeting anything more than $1,000 toward it, I don't, so.
I
Well,
would
no,
be
if-
in favor of it.
It was $1,000 for subscriptions is all we're currently putting in.
I would be in favor of doing it as well. As much trouble as SBF has recently with EITC getting our funding. You know, we'll get it eventually, but, you know, the season's going to be over by then.
Correct.
That's kind of what we're looking at.
So I just have a quick question. So the high school computer lab budget, that's the 20,000. Can those I don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about esports, so.
No, that's okay. Those computers in the high school are actually for a class to be able to do multitude of different computer programming. The gaming computers themselves have, I'll probably turn it over here in a second, but let's see if I do well. They have a lot more graphics to them.
Okay.
They also have a lot more graphic cards, a lot more fans because of the fact that the power that they utilize.
Okay.
So they're very specific to gaming, is my understanding. And they're actually, these computers were built by our students. So they weren't just ones we went out to Best Buy or Alienware and just purchased. These are ones that we purchased the components and the students put together. But that computer lab is to replace dated computers that are in our programming lab classroom. And then those computers will actually be repurposed for our technical education teacher who will use them for CAD or a version of computer animated drafting.
So just kind of circling back around to Mike's point, this is why I keep asking about making sure that we don't have things in there in the budget that could be line item duplicatively, because we're pulling out a $6,000 things for an esports, which we may not have to do if somewhere in there the $175,000 for tuition reimbursement that clearly didn't show last year is really there, and we're now line item. Do you understand what I mean? So I mean, I would be in favor of putting it back in, hoping that somewhere in there this money is hidden, and we find it. So just a thought.
And again, these are very large categories that we look at, and we're trying to break apart large categories. When we look at a budget, about 80% is salaries and benefits, and the rest is, when we look at full discretionary spending, we're roughly looking at $1.2 million. So really, of a $36 million budget, discretionary spending is only like $1.6 million. That's not a lot, but yet we're doing our due diligence of going through and looking for.
Yes, but I think like when you had sent us the chart that looked back at previous years of what we budgeted, what the deficit was, and what we ended up coming in at, I don't want to make cuts to something because we think we have a $2.5 million deficit if we really don't. Do you
Well,
understand what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
Mrs. Singley,
I don't want to dig into that discretionary if we don't have to.
Yes, so Mr. Singley, the point, and I think I know exactly where you're coming from on this, and this is why I chimed in very quickly on this, is the reason I unpacked all the data points is because we really cut this budget down to really the bare minimum, and I don't believe those days of showing, and Dr. Fox has prepared that presentation, of coming in where you budget a $3 million deficit and you come in at $100,000 deficit, or you budget a $2 million deficit and you come in $100,000 to the positive. Those days, I think, are over because of the fact that we cut, as you notice, in this budget, you've only had a $400,000 increase, but in this budget, you also have put in a $2 increase for support staff, which was almost a $500,000 increase there. The teachers have a 2.75% increase. The Act 93 is a 2.75% increase. Those increases, the health insurance went up 6% from the previous year, but yet all those things combined in together have only equaled a $400,000 increase overall in the final cost. So when you sit back and you take a 10,000-foot view of that budget, you think, well, our deficit should go from, our increase, our delta should be something around, $800, $900 million difference from last year. But why is Pete presenting a budget that's only $400,000 difference? Well, that's because we took all that extra fat, all that extra padding, all that extra stuff that was in there, and we took it out and came away from it, so that when you look at this budget next year at this time, you're not going to have that extra discretionary cushion where you're not going to come in and say, hey, Pete, or hey, Chester, where are we trending? It's going to be somewhere around, we're going to be coming somewhere around 1.7, 1.8, $2 million, because we're not going to spend every dollar we have budgeted, because that's not Dr. Fox's MO, or our department head's MO, or the principal's MO, because they're very good at what they do. So that's just, Dr. Fox could dovetail off that, but that's just all I wanted to say.
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely. We are trying to get as much actual as we can, and actually, to the point of, it is always concerning when you try to be as realistic, as real time as possible, knowing full well that things, again, in March could change by next year. One thing that hasn't changed much is our revenue. That has not changed much. And that's one element that does need to change much, because our expenses continue. We try to manage expenses to the best of our abilities, but revenue has not. We will, and again, continue to be, I have reached out to the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Secondary Schools to advocate for charter school reform. I've had a really nice email back, tried to sit down any subcommittees I can and participate in those to the best of our ability to be able to advocate for that. Number two, we did not increase revenue for projected governor's budget at this time. I'm hopeful it gets passed. That will be a little bit of additional revenue coming back through and for us. But yeah, in terms of revenue, that's an area where I think we need to certainly look at in the future to try to generate. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, the governor's budget does add to us a potential $636,000 in additional subsidy between the basic ed and the special education subsidy if it's passed as is. Last year, we got an additional $230,000 in additional revenue. You may ask why the increase. Well, it was because of the concerted effort of bringing back some of our students from cyber school. We got an additional 20 students back. It was also the effort of our PIMS person in fixing a lot, and I don't say fixing, but our data certainly corrected ourselves. We have a little more poverty in the district, and our aid ratio went up a little bit as well. I also want to say our median income is the highest in Perry County as well. So at $77,000, I'm looking at the data now. So by $5,000. So that is the accurate portrayal as well moving forward. But that is what the state governor, that's what Governor Shapiro's budget is portraying for us. So we hope that it passes as is. But we don't know where it's going to come from. We don't know what's going to come. And there is some light on the tunnel this time, some positive direction when it comes to charter school reform. It seems there is some willingness to at least discuss charter school reform. Before there was absolutely no light at that tunnel, so there's at least some light on it. So that's the update I have, and probably the only update you'll probably get until June when the budget as wheels start turning rapidly.
All right. I believe that addresses the takeaways from last week. In an effort to respect everybody's time and get us out of here at a decent time, if anybody has any additional follow-ups that they want to be addressed budget line item wise, please let us know within the next couple of days, and we will add a placeholder line item for the caucus agenda to add budget discussion into there. So we're not here. I like to stop here at around 8 o'clock. So if need be, to review more budget, we will do that next week at the caucus. All right.
534 to 37, which involves the PSERS for tech assistants, tech director, the workman's comp. So based on the answer I got to a question, there's 3 individuals that's taken care of, correct?
Correct.
So knowing that PSERS is a flat number, that 33.99, it appears that the PSERS amount for the tech director and then also for the 2 assistants is almost identical. Like if you split the 2 assistants up in half. And if you did that, that means it looks like they're all getting paid the same amount of money. And I don't know that that's the case. Do you see what I mean? So it says 31,000 for the tech director's Peasers, and then the 2 assistants are 62, which is double up that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. We can certainly take a look at that, certainly take a look
Maybe
at
that's
those
where
numbers.
the $6,000 is for the esports. Would that be cool? Because the
That would
same
be
thing, like
cool.
if you look at the workman's comp, it looks like you've got workman's comp of $7 for the tech director, and then 21, which would be,
That would be
looks like 3 people instead of just 2. I know that's only $14.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I see what you're saying. We can certainly take a
So
look
yeah,
at
I'm
that.
just wondering, because that was when I asked the question then, going back up to the salaries. I said, with that number went up from, the tech department salaries went from 182 to 260. And I was wondering, and you had said that that's 3 people, but that just seems high.
That $21 makes it look like there's a third person in those.
There's 3 people.
There's 3 people there,
I
but
don't,
that's,
it may be the PIMS coordinator. I'm not sure if they're under curriculum or under me.
Oh, that is the third, that is what it is. There's actually 4 people there. That is Mrs. Troutman. I should have mentioned names. That's the PIMS person as well under the tech department. Because I believe, let me check John, do you have that paper? Yeah, let me check the salary
Yes, it
report.
does.
Right, if
come
you
on.
look at 635, it was recoded.
Let me check the salary report really quick to see where it's.
So originally it was under the curriculum and instruction secretary. When
Yeah,
that
just let me-
curriculum and instruction secretary left, that position.
Yeah, it was reallocated to.
So my apologies, there is 4.
Yes, it is 220
Three assistants.
yes, it's 4 people. There's 4 people under that code. That's why the reallocation is. I reclassified the PIMS person under that code.
even if you do that, would that still account for an $80,000 swing in salary?
Yes.
No, I meant, originally, it looks like it was 3 people under 182,000 last year. Now you added the 4th person, and that went to a
So I could give you the salaries for the 3 people that are there and the original salaries that were included under that in the previous years, but I mean, the salaries that are included under the 22, it would include that because the salaries that are included under that code are 91,406, 75,320, 46,5, and 62,519. They're just the 4 salaries that are included under that, which would be that amount. And then you would add the retirement in there, which would be almost 91,000. So yeah, I mean, I double-checked this, they're all should be under that code.
That actually comes up more.
Well, actually, because,
I hate to say it. Sorry, let me just add that again. This is
Hang on a
just
second.
salaries, right?
hang on a second.
Yeah, that actually takes it to 275.
Hang on one second.
That was basically my only question. I mean, I have questions about lines 1, 2, and 3, but that might get resolved by, I might ask to look at the whole line items of all the salaries, just to kind of see where that $500,000 swing took place in the, it's not that I don't trust you guys, I'm just looking to see kind of, from my own mental capacity.
If you want, I'll send out the full salary reports of everybody. I have those. I can send those out this evening.
And I'll double-check to ensure that I have included, but I mean, I went through all this when I was doing it to ensure the correct salaries were inputted. But I'll double-check it and ensure that they're all
And
correct.
let me just ask one other question. So when it says high school's teacher salaries, and you've added up all of those teacher salaries, I noticed that down below, the FACS teacher, the technical education teacher,
They've been pulled out.
they were already pulled, they
Yes.
were pulled out, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just, I can't get my mind around going from 1.2 to 1.7. in the high school and going from 1.9 to 2.0 in the middle school, if there was a coding difference between the middle school and the high school, because both numbers went up, which I would understand because of salary increases, right? But $500,000, I'm trying to get my hand around that, so.
Well, like I said, pull your questions together, anything additional you have, obviously, we will make time for it. And then Pete, if you can take away for the tech questions. and figure
Mr.
those
Fry,
out.
so is it safe to say that the spreadsheet that we've used in the past to send questions, we should stop using at this point? If we have specific questions for the caucus meeting, to maybe send them a different way so it could be a little less clunky?
Maybe somebody can just put like a line at the bottom, somebody put in a filled line to separate, and we'll just indicate from that point forward.
Okay,
Are the new
so-
questions?
Yep, same spreadsheet, just.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yep. All right. Just a couple of quick things there on the agenda, the meeting schedule, policy committee meeting. Next week, April 4th, 5:30 in the LGI, caucus meeting to follow at 7 o'clock here.
Because the tech director is broken out.
And then the regular school board meeting on the 11th. At this time, are there any public comments? Please?
Hi, Taryn.
Yeah, but you still have to tell us. Hold on one second, we'll bring you a mic.
So I was paying attention as I was working on my internship stuff, but I noticed about the buying of new iPad cases for the kindergartners. And so the idea that I gathered from that was we would give, like, as a senior, we'd give, like, my old iPad case to, like, a kindergartner. Am I understanding that right? Okay.
That's correct.
So I've noticed a lot of kids that like to break the little, like, the ledge on there. Yeah, you've probably seen it. A lot of kids like to break the little edge off of their iPad case, which basically renders it ungivable to a kindergartner. So I think if you wanted to save a little money, because that's what we're trying to do, if you want to save a little money, maybe kind of put, now Mr. Funk, you might maybe like, this is too hard to discipline, but maybe you could. Maybe put in like a fee if you break that, because that way it's kind of a consequence to breaking that little piece off your iPad case. That way you wouldn't have to buy so many more new ones. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, at this point, doesn't look like there's anybody else. I'll move for adjournment.
You have to make say second.
Second.
All right, this meeting is